All right, everybody. So welcome to this PA Student Edition Zoom call. PA Students for Anti-Racism. We really appreciate, everybody's attendance, everybody's support, and sharing this platform and sharing this meeting. This is, again, we made it to where it's an open discussion. So we would like to invite people to hop in and be panelists and, share their thoughts as well. Right now, you can't see the other attendees. However, when people raise their hand to be invited into the discussion, we'll allow you to share your faces in your video and your audio as well. But just to lay out some ground rules, again, as we posted in the flyer, please be respectful of everybody's opinions and thoughts. Please be sensitive to what people are sharing, and understand that we are a PA profession. We are all PA advocates. Yeah, you already know. Don't be rude to anybody else. Respect one another. And so without further ado, I'm just going to go ahead and introduce what we're doing and introduce my fellow co-hosts. So first and foremost, rest in peace to George Floyd and the many other victims throughout the years. I wanted to thank my peers, Marian, Stan, and Hunter, for co-hosting this call with me. Thank you to Brian for sponsoring as well. And I want to also thank all of you, our PA community, whether you're a practicing PA, a PA student, pre-PA student, a PA affiliate. We thank you for hearing these words that are going to be spoken tonight. I myself have voiced a lot of my own thoughts this past week, and pretty much I'll just recap my thoughts and leave it for an open floor for all my other colleagues. So I believe that in America there is inequality, inequity, and most importantly, injustice. Injustice for people of color, but primarily for Black Americans. As PAs, we take an oath to hold our responsibility for the health, safety, welfare, and dignity of all human beings. We're to treat equally all persons who seek our care, and we will work with other members of healthcare to provide compassionate and effective care to all our patients, all of them. So when it is said that all lives matter, yes, that is accurate and true, theoretically, but in reality, it's not. All lives matter once Black lives matter to everyone. As a Cambodian American male from Long Beach, one of the most diverse cities in America, I have faced discrimination from other minorities, law enforcement, and at the same time, I know my privilege, and I've been privileged enough to not know what it means to be Black in America. My best friend growing up was Black. My basketball and football teammates were Black. Witnessing their interactions with law enforcement made me nervous. So I can't imagine how they felt. One of my most vivid experiences was when my friend and I were driving around Long Beach during Black Friday, and we were pulled over. Never had I ever been so scared for my best friend, and I didn't know what I was about to witness. So, he was polite and respectful the whole entire time, as he always is. And fortunately, we were let off with a warning with some BS traffic issue. But my point is, regardless of what our skin color is and our background is, we all have privilege, some more than others, and that doesn't downplay anybody's hard work to get to where they are. What I'm just saying is we got to use our privilege to stand up for what's right, for those who have been silenced by systemic racism and people, and the problems that people of color face. We have to empathize with them, and especially our patients. So, we have to understand the past traumas of racism in their own lives as well as their people's. For example, the Tuskegee experiments. Understand how our white coat plus our skin color is perceived by patients. Are they comfortable with you? Are they comfortable with me? What's their blood pressure when they see you versus me versus a Black PA versus a white PA? What are they taught? In terms of patient education. in school, in PA school, we're taught that, you know, you're not supposed to give an ACE inhibitor to Black patients, but we're never really taught, aside from, you know, poor diet and poor exercise, lack of exercise, why do patients have hypertension, right? So as PAs, we have to understand why the prevalence of diabetes and hypertension is so high. Could it be because, you know, they have chronically elevated cortisol levels? Black people fear for their lives, not only at the hands of law enforcement, but other citizens as well. Black parents fear for their children's lives, as well as their own lives. So does this play a role in their overall health? You know, why was the mortality rate of COVID-19 so high amongst Black Americans? Could it be because of the barriers of employment? You know, not all, I'm sorry. You know, do they have essential jobs that they have to work, increasing their exposure to possible COVID-19? Is it because of housing discrimination, forced to live in crowded living conditions, therefore making it harder to socially distance? Could it be the persistent lack of access to healthcare, again, playing into the higher rates of chronic illnesses and difficulty to seek treatments? So in closing, as PAs in this generation, we are the future of this profession and this country. I encourage all of my peers to understand and with our Black colleagues with what's going on currently and what's been going on for generations. It's not enough to just see the disease and the condition. We have to understand and actually see the patient as a person. And not just that, but we have to understand what our PA colleagues, what our Black PA colleagues have to deal with on a day-to-day basis. So I appreciate you all for allowing me to use my platform to share my thoughts and my experiences. And like I said, I'll never, ever understand what it is to be Black in America. But I just hope everybody empathizes and tries to understand with an open mind. So with that being said, I'm going to open up the floor to my PA colleagues.
Okay, I guess I'll start. My name is Marian Thomas. I'm a second-year PA student at Charles Drew University of Medicine and Science. And, you know, I know a lot of people have been hearing the phrase that Black people are tired. We are tired. We are tired of the racist ideologies that this country was founded on. We've had hundreds of years to make things right with no success. Black people have been dealing with racial injustice and systemic oppression since 1619. So that means that's literally 400 plus years of this, right? So tired is really an understatement, to be quite honest. We're exhausted, we're barely hanging on. America has not listened to us and has not listened to reason and understand the meanings of this suffering, right? We've tried protesting with sit-ins, with marches. We've tried kneeling. We've tried everything peaceful under the sun, to be quite honest. And therefore, you know, with all of that being said, uprising is a product of our oppressed system and a manifestation of our righteous rage. I feel like we have a rage that a society tells Black people that, you know, they can be harassed, humiliated, assaulted, and killed, and nothing will be done for it. Rioting, to me, is a reaction of what losers or winners do after a football game. I feel like this is an uprising. I feel like George Floyd's murder was literally the spark of a flame that we've been trying to put out for years on end. Being on Instagram has been like so eye-opening, and Twitter. And there was a quote from Will Smith that I saw that said that racism is not getting worse, it's just getting filmed. And I feel like that's pure fact. Like, Black people have been harassed, we've been beaten, we've been terrorized, we've been killed by police from time to time. And from the time we've been forced into this country, so until present day. So we have not seen change. And history has clearly shown that. We have a pandemic going on. 40 million Americans have lost their jobs and are on unemployment. We have a lack of leadership in this country. I feel like we have no glimmer for hope. So I say this again, Black people are tired, okay? Black lives matter more than your property. They matter more than your feelings. They matter, period. And if you can't understand that and we can't change society to reflect that, I really feel like you're a part of the problem. And I'll pass it off. I'll pass it off to anyone who wants to say anything else before we open up the floor again.
Hunter, go ahead.
You got it, Sam.
All right. So I really truly appreciate Aaron for putting this together and actually bring all of us together as far as like healthcare professionals, especially due to like the type of power and like privilege that we actually have. So it's like, you might not have a platform like Aaron has a platform, but you do have some type of influence that you can actually use to like get people active in the community and actually do something. And I want to start by saying that like I'm very proud. Like I am like I don't think I've ever seen anything like this before, as far as people protesting and all of us coming together. And like we were just talking a little earlier about like us, like we're all millennials here, and the generation before us, like they grew up a different way, and they basically didn't. They don't feel the same way that we feel about this, and I'm so happy that like it's not just people who look like me out there who are protesting, and like it's everyone, and it's not just here, and it's just like you got United Kingdom, New Zealand, Japan protesting, and I feel like things have gotten to a point where whether whether or not there are riots that are happening and like looting and things like that are happening, which like I really don't agree with, but at the same time it's like it's a result, like cause and effect. It's like the symptom of like what's been happening for so long. Like Hunter just said that like he was born in 1995, right? So it's like if you think about it, there's a lot of people who were probably like between 10 and 15 in 2011 when Trayvon Martin was murdered, right? So those people now, 10 years later, 9 years later, basically like are some of the ones that are actually like out there. And like, like you really don't fully understand why the world is the way that it is still to this day. I want to make sure that I say rest in peace to Breonna Taylor, rest in peace to Ahmaud Marbury, and definitely rest in peace to George Floyd. Like the list goes on. When you look at me right now, like you don't know who I am, you don't know what I do. I could have easily been one of these people, and like all three of them was all last month, basically, right? One was jogging, which I do every single day. The other one was just like trying to change his life, like Steven Jackson, the basketball player's friend. And the other one was at home, like that just happened like that. And like, a lot of the times I think I'm like, my parents call me, they talk to me. Like, I feel like that won't happen to me because like I live a certain way and like this is that, but there's like there's no way you can avoid like a split moment for a situation like that to happen. To piggyback on what Aaron said, like America is one of the best places to live in the world. No matter like where in America that you are, you're blessed to actually be here. And like, this is our country and this is our future. Like we're the ones that are going to be in charge of it. Like we need to make sure that it is the way that we actually like, like need it to be. And I feel like you need to judge a person by the content of their character and by their actions before you can actually judge them by it, like just based on what they look like. And I feel like that's something that's really ingrained in people. It's something that we're really going to have to do a lot of like unlearning and teaching for like the future generations and like the people ahead of us. We all have friends that like might not be understanding of what's happening right now. Take the time to talk to them. And there's too many resources out there for us not to actually like learn these things. Like I fully didn't understand everything, like I said before, as far as like how afraid people were when Trayvon Martin first died. Because like that same day I came in my house with a gray hoodie on And from jogging, like it was probably 8 p.m. and my parents were watching the news. They're like, "Where were you?" I was like, "I was out jogging," and I got the gray hoodie on, and the kid just got killed. Just wearing the gray hoodie and everything like that. He looked suspicious, and like my parents just like stopped me from running at night and things like that, right? But you start thinking about it and like, yo, I didn't really understand why they're afraid. It's like one thing, but it's been like 9 years of this like happening over and over again. And at this point now, I have little nephews. You look at my nephew, he looks like J. Cole. He has the dreads and everything. And like, nicest kid, really intelligent. But I'm sure by the time he's 16, he's gonna be looked at, by the police or whoever, just by like the color of his skin before they actually like judge him. So I feel like there's a lot of things that we can do as far as like healthcare providers, as far as like educating the people around us, and just like trying to see if we can get more people who look like us in these positions of power.
Yeah. And going back to Marion talking about just that tiredness, it's something that I have never seen because that is not my community. That is not who immediately surrounds me. And that's just a product of where I'm at in my family, right? And hearing her put it to words, not really understanding when all of this started with Trayvon and the Black Lives Matter movement, and not understanding then just the weight of the history of like centuries of this building up and peaceful protesting, trying and then being shot down and being criticized for everything, right? That it was like, oh, MLK has kids in his protest. How dare he do that? He's protesting wrong. And then Malcolm X was criticized. Kaepernick was criticized. Now everybody is getting still criticized for the protesting becoming riots. And it's something that as a white man, you have to really want to understand it, because it's not something that we have experienced. And I speak very broadly in saying that, and I do believe it still rings true, because when would a white person who's middle class really have the mindset to sit and internalize that and really understand the other side and the purpose of feeling so tired and being so fed up with the system that we have today?
I appreciate you guys, leading off and sharing this. Marion, do you want to touch up on a point, or should we invite, somebody to?
Let's invite somebody to share
Okay.
their experiences. I know we asked if you could raise your hand, turn on your video, or at least turn on your audio if you're not comfortable being on video, and just share how you feel. We have a couple of other topics that we want to hit on today and talk about. So the way we just want to express our feelings as a panel and then open it up to everyone else to share your words. We will only be able to take a couple at a time. We won't be able to have everyone get on video, or we won't be able to listen to everyone, but just be open-minded and really try and take in what other people are telling you.
All right, so we're going to go ahead and welcome our guest panelist right here. Go ahead and introduce yourself.
Hi, everyone. My name is Jasmine Cofield. I am a PAS2 at University of Detroit Mercy. I'm also the founder of the PAC movement. That's short for Physician Assistants of Color. And I, thank you for first, being one of the first to hold this. I do think it's a great opportunity to, one, have a space for students who are one, impacted by this, and more importantly, two, want to be educated. I do want to keep in mind that if you do want to be educated, you cannot get angry at how we educate. And I do want to start off by saying it is not the job sometimes of oppressed people to teach you why racism is wrong, or to teach you why, you know, you have privilege. And to be a future Black healthcare provider, a Black student, and we're not even over this pandemic. And I think for me, the most hurtful things have been from classmates and other healthcare providers, because I've just seen us collectively come together to fight this health crisis. I've seen so many people vocal about and upset about their rotations being taken away. And it showed me people do have voices, but it's about issues that impact them directly. Then for you
Yeah.
to turn around 6 weeks later and is mute about an issue that do not impact you, it showed me that you only care about problems that impact you. And I think that was it, for lack of better words, it was betrayal. Um, you know, just to put it, we consider the author of what we call the PA Bible, Pants Pearls. The author is a Black male. I put it like this: if you do not care about George Floyd's death, you do not care about Dwayne Williams. You do not care about me. You do not care about your Black classmates. And we've been forced to watch the death of many people on TV, see no justice, and then turn around and are expected to exist in these workspaces, these Zoom sessions with our classmates and professors, and is never once acknowledged. And I can't, I can't honestly find the words to think, to really explain like what that means. And if you can't advocate for that, I don't know how you will advocate for Black patients in the future.
Exactly.
This is something that cannot be awkward to talk about. You have to kind of understand why your Black patients don't trust you, even if you're not like them. And you can't be upset if they don't. If you can't say, well, I've never directly did anything to them. It's not the point. That's, as a collective whole, the healthcare system, along with law enforcement, have collectively done wrong by African American people. And I do want to add this book that I encourage you all to read. It's about the history of healthcare doing Black people wrong, and this is why it's such a disconnect. This is why your patients don't come see you. This is why patients wait until they're nearly on their deathbed to come to the emergency room. Is because we don't feel like the healthcare system has our best interest at heart. And I believe that autopsy report just sealed the deal. Medicine was on our side in George Floyd's case. It was on our side. And yet this medical examiner blamed comorbidities on this recorded murder. So I don't know how we cannot see the connect with health issues and social justice. So that's all I want to say. Just check in on your Black classmates. If educate yourself. It's not our burden to educate you sometimes. I get it. Sometimes people don't know the right words to say, don't want to offend. I will take the time out to explain to my friends how some things come off, but at the end of the day, and not to be like very, very vulgar, but we never have to explain why rape is wrong.
Right.
So why do we have to explain why racism is wrong? We never have to teach about that. Child abuse,
Exactly.
that's never been something that we've had to teach.
It should be a no-brainer almost.
Right.
It's a no-brainer.
Mm-hmm.
It's a no-brainer.
Right.
And
go
ahead.
I was going to say, to tag along with what Jasmine said, as a PA student, when we're on clinical rotations and we are with our preceptors, we don't know anything. What do they tell us to do? Look it up, right? They tell us to look it up. They tell you to educate yourself, look it up. So I feel like the Black community doesn't have a responsibility to educate you when there's there's tons of books, resources, magazines, journals that you
Movies.
can read on white supremacy, oppression, systemic racism. There's a bunch, And so I feel like exactly what Jasmine was saying, like, educate yourself.
I'm going to say one more thing, just again, as to make it even more relevant to Black PA profession. I just want to make something like just share my experience. I was at a hospital. It was my second day. I asked for where the resident lounge was because I got lost, of course. And I had to really prove, even with my white coat, I had to really prove that I I should be in the resident lounge. I had to show that I was a student, and I just feel like just keep all that stuff in mind. We have to fight for our spot,
Oh my
even
gosh.
when
Yeah.
we are.
Mm-hmm.
Our occupation is a privilege as a Black person. I will admit that. Some occupation we attach sometimes ourselves to things that give us privilege. I will say, as a PA, being a PA student and a future PA, that is a privilege, and that's why we wear our white coats proudly. But we still, to this day, have to fight to prove that we deserve to be here. So keep that in mind. Thank you, Mary. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you so much for
Absolutely.
sharing.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you for
Thank you.
sharing. Yeah.
I, I,
I,
I think,
Well
Aaron,
said.
maybe we can invite one more and then move on to the
yeah.
next topic.
Mm.
I think we had Gabriella raise her hand first. So
Okay.
we'll have her say something, and then Natalie and Sato, please feel free to stay on as the panelists. So yeah, go ahead, Gabriella.
Hi everyone, I'm Gabriella Hayes. I'm a student at UAB in my clinical year. I at first just wanted to come on talking about kind of the silence from AAPA that you guys highlighted. A classmate of mine, or a few classmates of mine, shared an Instagram story that was like, "To our friends who are silent, we see you." And I had not wanted to post anything on Instagram because I didn't want to seem just in the moment, because it was the cool thing to say, because it was the cool thing to do. This is something that I've been an advocate for criminal justice reform since college. Like, this is something my family talks about all the time. I've talked to my friends about this, but I hadn't said anything on Instagram. And I messaged her and she was like, I just basically talking to her inspired me to speak out. And I think that we should be hearing that from AAPA. And I think we should also just be considering racism outside of the death of these individuals, which is just like so heartbreaking. Like, the way that we approach African Americans in our healthcare system, the infant mortality rate and the maternal mortality rate for Black women is something that I have done projects on. I'm doing a dual master's in public health, and it is hard to even read some of the statistics, but just like, how can we change these things in our world? And it's not really an access to care issue, because in Birmingham, Alabama, some of the most densely populated areas with Black people are close to 3 hospitals in our downtown area. It is the world we live in. It is the systemic oppression of these women that leads them to have a lifetime of fear. I'm reading these chat messages and I'm like, oof. Yeah. So anyways, it has been very eye-opening to be in Birmingham, to go to a couple of protests here. I live in a predominantly white neighborhood, and we had a protest today, and we did like an 8-minute laying down, and it was just so hard I haven't been able to watch the video of George Floyd's death, of his murder, and it was so hard to hear what the woman speaking was saying that he said in the video. And we had kids around us, and just having these conversations are great. So thank you guys for putting this on. I love learning from you guys.
Absolutely. I mean, to answer your question, as well as the question we got from one of the attendees. So the question was, this person learned today that sometimes saying nothing may be seen as better than saying something that is not good enough. So how do we think those individuals or organizations should respond? And to be honest, like, Gabriella, I'm the first to admit, like, I judged people off of their silence, right? And if I was following you on Instagram and I knew like you were posting stuff, and I saw that, I would have been upset at you as well. But that's on me, right? And I think for the individuals in your case, where I don't know your history, I didn't know that you've been advocating for criminal justice and studying all that for a while, as well as the individuals and organizations. What I would say is, it's inside here. It's inside how you feel, how you believe. Yeah, you don't have to share and show everything, but you also have to understand, like, we need y'all right now. We need people to advocate for the people who have been silenced. I apologize. You know, they've been so loud and vocal that nobody has been hearing them for the past however many decades.
Exactly.
So us as non-Black people in America need to
Right.
amplify our voice so that they can be heard, right? So yeah, you
Exactly.
know, there's nothing wrong with being silent because you don't know what to say and stuff. But for me, I've always, ESL kid growing up, I was afraid to open up my mouth because I was gonna get made fun of, to the point now, like, I'm so outspoken that I won't shut up, right? And so I'm using that, like, curse to amplify other people's voices to really say something. So that's again, it's just all on how you feel individually. And
Yeah.
you know,
Also, I see a lot of messages in the chat about riots and looting, and I don't think this is necessarily the time to be asking these questions because we're talking about bigger issues at hand. But these people have tried, our country has tried peaceful protesting.
Exactly. And I mentioned that. I said we've tried protesting, we've tried sit-ins, we've tried marching, we've tried kneeling.
Yeah.
I'm just kind of like, what else can we do? Like,
Yeah.
you know, and I'm not saying that I approve of the looting or anything like that, but I'm just saying, like, you have
it's
to
understood.
you have to understand people are upset. Like, people are fired up. Like, it's kind of like when your back is against the wall and you have nothing else to do. Like, you literally have, like, this is, like, you know what I'm saying? And I'm not saying for, like, condoning, like, oh, looting is a great thing. No, I'm just saying, like, I understand where people are coming from. You know what I'm saying? And this is the point of this session, to understand where other people are coming from. Like,
it's like, I'll say this, man. It's like our government, as far as like the history of the United States, has all just been like riots and, you know, fight the power, right?
Yep.
Somebody like posted this recently today. They were like, "What do you call the Boston Tea Party?" It was a riot.
right.
You know what I'm saying? Like,
Exactly.
it's literally a riot. We got sick and tired of the British. Boom, and like, we tried peaceful protesting. Y'all didn't even try that. Like, we're trying peaceful protesting and didn't work out. You know what? All the things going on in 2020, I think people are just like ticked off, man.
Yeah, I think if you want to
Exactly.
approach this in a lighter tone, I tagged way up in this chat Trevor Noah's just podcast. He had an Instagram video, but I mean, who wouldn't want to look at him for 20 minutes? But I tagged the podcast link, and he just kind of summarizes it in a way that is pretty approachable, and that basically we have social contracts and those are being broken by the police on a daily basis. So, you know.
I will say, though, the question about, like, the violent rioting and looting, it's absolutely correct for you to condemn it.
Yeah.
However, if you're gonna condemn both, I would say the approach to say it would be, you know, it's horrible what's happening to these stores with all the riot and looting. However, it's even worse that this man was killed because of X, Y, and Z.
Exactly.
So you're not prioritizing
Exactly.
property over lives. You know what I'm saying? So
Exactly.
You got to reframe your concern. I mean, I've seen it posted several times, but it's not like it's sad that he died, but why the riots? It should be like, the riots are bad. We should be more sad that he died.
Exactly.
You know, can I make a point real quick and open this up for a little bit of discussion?
Sure. Sure.
You know,
Welcome.
as Jazz from the PAC said, you know, the biggest issue is, you know, people don't see it as their problem, right?
Exactly.
And I'm going to I talked to Aaron about this, and I talked to our boy Carl about this earlier too, where, you know, the analogy of like the house being on fire. I'm pretty sure a lot of us have seen it. You know,
I was just about to get into that.
Right.
Yep.
So the Black community house is on fire. And so the analogy is like, oh, well, do you hose down every house in the neighborhood, or do you just hose down the one that's on fire currently? And I wanted to try to get people to maybe change that analogy just a little bit, where it's one house, right? We all live in one country. That's the United States of America. That's where a lot of us came here to, you know, attain the American dream. A lot of us immigrants, our parents came here to attain the American dream, right? So we all live under one roof, and there's just multiple different rooms, right? There's the Black community room, there's the Asian community room, there's the Latina community room, you know, there's the LGBTQ room. right? There's all different rooms within that house. So if one of those rooms is on fire, we're all fucked, right? It's not just one house, right? And because it's not my house, I don't care, right? Because that narrative has gone on for way too long, right?
Exactly.
It's happening now, right? I mean, we have more progressive Asians, like Aaron, myself, all these other Asians that are out there, you know, talking, right? But as a whole, the Asian community has been quiet for a very long time, right? Just like the Hispanic community has been quiet on stuff that, you know, only regards them, right? You know, as an Asian community, we never talked out about all the internment that's going on, right? And as, you know, as someone that's Japanese, as someone that dates a Japanese American, knows a lot of Japanese American people, right? We should understand what internment is like a lot more than a lot of other communities, right? Because it happened to our people 67 years ago during World War II, right? But the thing is, you know, it's not part of our house. It's not our house burning down. Therefore, we're like, all right, well, it's not my problem, right? So can we change that narrative so that we're all under the same roof, right? If one of the rooms is burning, we're all burning.
Exactly.
Right? I think that brings unity and cohesion in a whole lot more than saying there's only one house, that house is burning, and then we expect all the neighbors to come in and help that one house.
Right. And this is why like exactly, you took the words out of my mouth, Sato, which is why I feel like the hashtag All Lives Matter is problematic, right? Mm-hmm. Exactly what you said about the analogy of the house being on fire. If the fire department is going to do everything in their power to put out that one house, right? They're not going to attempt to look at their homes, the other homes, because they're not on fire, right? So I think we all know all lives matter, and we never said only Black lives matter, right? But Black lives are the ones that are being relatively undervalued across the globe, are more likely to be ended with police brutality. So that's pretty much like where the hashtag, the Black Lives Matter hashtag came from and the movement came from, right? So it's exactly what Sato is saying, you know what I'm saying? Like, we need to focus on, you know, which house is on fire right now, right? And we need to stand in unison with everybody. Everybody needs to stand in unison to put out the fire on the house that's on fire, right?
Exactly.
So,
Natalie?
I think he called on you, Natalie.
Oh, sorry. I'm like oblivious. I'm like, did they see me? Did they not? Sorry, I'll introduce myself. My name is Natalie. I live in Denver. I attend Rocky Vista University in Parker, Colorado. I am a little older than you 90s babies, but that's okay. I'm
89, girl. So
see,
okay.
I'm 87. So I'm like,
okay.
I'm 35. You know, my experience is a little different. But in that being said, to echo all the sentiments that everyone is saying, I want to really bring it back to training. Because as healthcare providers, this is where it starts for us, because we're the front line for patients of color. And I mean patients of color because being a Black American is a beautiful thing, but I have Mexican American brothers and sisters who are struggling. I have Asian American brothers and sisters who struggle. I have people who literally immigrate here who struggle. And the problem is that anytime there's an other and an us, it clashes. And the issue is that you aren't seeing yourself in the person you're treating. And I think if people began to see themselves in the people they treat, then they would treat them the way that they would want to be treated, right? I'm gonna bring it back to a book. Do you guys see this? Okay, this is a textbook.
And think about
school. Familiar, correct? So in this textbook, they have an entire chapter on providing culturally competent healthcare. And one of the most important things they said is do yourself a service. And when you see a new patient, I don't care if you are just taking a history, you're seeing them for a pre-op, post-op, whatever, you have to take their perspective, right? You have to sort of put yourself in their position. I don't care if they're there for a routine visit or they're getting a cholecystectomy, whatever the case is, you don't know what they're going through. You don't know what their experiences has been. You don't know what their next is going to look like. But if you take a moment just to pause and put yourself in their position, then you have a moment to listen with open ears and an open heart without your stereotypes, your biases, your background, and everything else that clouds your vision of seeing patients for who they are. Yes, you have to, do pattern recognition when you're looking for illnesses and do quick diagnoses, but that doesn't mean you completely blanket statement things and then your approach to patients are the same for every single one. Someone's experience as a Black American could be completely separate from mine, but if I lump them together, I do myself and that patient a disservice by not allowing their story to educate me, by not allowing their experience to inform my care. And so I understand the bigger conversation right now, obviously, is the turmoil of the country. But really what needs to happen is we have to take a look within as providers and figure out, okay, in this situation, in this instance, what can I do for me as a provider in my training to make sure that doesn't continue? What can I do to make sure when I see someone of color, I don't care what the nationality is, mixed races. I mean, you honestly have no idea. The US is so much of a melting pot now than it was before. You could think someone is Mexican, you could think someone is Black, and they end up speaking a whole different language. You'd be like, oh, well, you know, I thought I had the translation on deck, but I don't. So don't go into it assuming you know. Don't just take your agenda off, look within. And then the other thing I want to say on top of taking a perspective, forgetting your biases and stereotypes, is know your history. Because a lot of the issue is American history glosses over a lot of the injustices that have happened at the hands of people in power in our country, right? If you want to take it like he was saying to the Japanese Americans when they were put in concentration internment camps, right? You want to talk about the Trail of Tears with Native Americans and what they had to go through. You see that a health disparity for Native Americans, that they have the highest rate of alcoholism and suicide. Well, it didn't get that way on its own. They were living in this country without the interruption. And then here comes this oppressive government and swooshes them to a far off place from where from what they know. And they're just trying to survive, right? Black Americans, I had this conversation with a friend of mine. I said, being Black in America is a very unique position. We're not like Nigerian Americans who come here on their own volition. We weren't like South African Americans who come on their own volition. 400 years ago, we were brought as slaves, right? Like Marian had already said, we weren't brought here as citizens who were always intended to have equal rights. That was never the case, right? The slavery that was happening in Europe extended to colonization in African countries, and we came over here not under our own volition. Well, since we've been here, we've built an amazing country. We've been able to survive, although language was stripped from us, religion was stripped from us. You weren't able to have families. Women were raped, diseases were had, all of these things happening yet, and still you have these people who are just wanting so badly for you to accept that your America is just as much ours, because the moment you got here is when we got here too. And the issue is that racism is not just a feeling, it's a structure, right? I think, and I wrote this in the chat, it's difficult to say, I've never understood your experience, it's hard for me, can you teach me? Completely separate from, let me show you what redlining is. When you weren't allowed to buy houses in certain neighborhoods if you weren't a certain color. Let me show you what miseducation is and how taxation pays for education. And so if your neighborhood doesn't have a high job rate or it has a high job loss, then you don't have enough money to educate your schools and them be equal. Let me explain to you what it looks like when you have healthcare disparities, who now you have Tuskegee studies that are being done in these communities. You have people who are not addressing the maternal fetal health disparities. This all happens because you have falsehoods about what it is to be Black. Black people can take more pain, lie. Black people inherently eat bad food, lie, I'm a vegan. Black people do all of these things. You have to really take time to know the history, understand your position in that history, and have a heart to actually hear people for who they are, right? And as providers, that's what we're trained to do. I hear you, I take a bomb all cards history. We're gonna figure this out because 90% of what you say is in the history now, and all of my tests are confirmatory, so we don't waste dollars, right? Let me figure this out first, see you for who you are, and then we can move forward. And then it creates a space for patients to be open.
Exactly.
Right? If you come in guns blazing, hands drawn, oh, you have type 2 diabetes, you're not taking metformin, and I gave you this and your high blood. No. Find out why. Can I get to my medications? Do I have a job? Do I still have health insurance? Did Medicaid cut me off because I was 2 cents above what the minimum was for me to qualify? Like, these are really real things, and this is the structure that we're against. So I understand why people have a bit of a hard time understanding sort of the passion and the pain, because for you guys, it's more of an experience, but you really have to understand that non-persons of color have benefited from structures that were never intended to allow Black Americans to have equal rights. And that's the bigger issue. That's why you see the rage. That's why you see how emblazoned we are. Yes, rest in power to George Floyd and Breonna Taylor and Tamir Rice and Sandra Bland and Eric Gardner and Alton Sterling and Tatiana Jefferson. I mean, I could list names for probably like 20 minutes. And that's just in the last 20 years. let's take it back to lynchings. Let's go all the way back to runaway slaves. Like, you have to understand that, like, epigenetic changes, which we all know is true.
Right.
Epigenetic change is a thing. Like, you have genetics. Yes, my DNA says that 16% of me is European. We know how that happened. And the other 80% of me is from Western Africa, right? But there's epigenetic changes, and there have been studies that have documented that Black people coming from an African country, one generation in this country, and you already have a lower fetal maternal, you already have what am I trying to say? Your maternal fetal outcomes are already worse after just one generation in this country because of the lived experience of being Black in America. And that's an epigenetic change. So when you see that you have higher diseases for heart disease, prostate cancer, high blood pressure, diabetes, all those things are epigenetic changes where you are literally suppressing a people so much that there are molecular changes to our DNA, which makes it more susceptible to things like COVID. On top of disparities in healthcare, now you have a double whammy, because genetically I'm already predisposed, but now socially there's nothing for me to do to help combat that. And so that's why there's such an outcry, right? Like, it's about deaths because we're tired of being traumatized by Black deaths. I have 3 kids, surprise. My oldest is almost 12, my daughter is 7, and my baby is 6. Gosh, she just had a birthday. But I have 2 sons and a daughter. And so for them, I have to sort of explain, yeah, Black death is not, it's not normal. I know you see it a lot, but it's not supposed to be this way, right? Like, this is not how God ever intended for any of us to be born into this society and to live our lives. It's not how it's supposed to be. But the issue is that not enough people recognize that, right? Like, not enough people are understanding of the immense history. 70+% of our experience in this country was either in slavery or segregated. And since the segregation has stopped, so to quote unquote, now we've had this ridiculous oppression in healthcare and in the judicial system and in policing. And it's to a point where we're like, we can't handle it anymore. It hurts. It hurts to a core. And the reason it hurts so bad is because of those epigenetic changes. The DNA that I carry was the DNA that slaves had to go through, was the DNA that came across an Atlantic slave ship with 400 packed in the bottom, with no language, no communication, no nothing, and still forced to try to make it in a country that was never built for you. So I'm sorry, I've like stepped on a soapbox.
Natalie, you have outside.
I appreciate you. I appreciate
literally
you
and truly.
You eloquate like basically. I feel like as a Black person, I feel these ways. I know this information, but it doesn't come out of my mouth the way it comes out of your mouth. And I truly appreciate you.
Exactly.
Yeah, I appreciate you guys. I like hijacked it. I'm so sorry. Here's a textbook. Y'all, it's available. Ask your universities to hook you up, but it has all of the information you need. It goes into the knit and grit of how to actually be culturally confident PAs, because y'all, honestly, we have to be the ones that enforce that change. I'm sort of a millennial. Like I said, I'm 87, so I'm like,
you in there.
I'm in there. Okay, I'll take it. I'll take it. But you guys, here's the textbook. So someone asked, it's A Guide to Clinical Practice, the 6th edition, physician assistant. And this, honestly, if you don't have it for cultural competence, it has every rotation information you need, the dealing with mass casualties. I mean, the book is a gem, honestly. I bought it because I was like, oh, it's on the reading list. Maybe I'll use it. Not for real. Pick it up.
Hey, Natalie, I think they're looking for influencers for that book. So, we already got you. But shameless plug for our Minority Report podcast. We need you on one of these episodes. I'm just saying.
Big time.
Please.
Y'all let me know. Listen, I'm in my clinical year now. Life is about to open up. You know, I don't have to be drugged out trying to get my caffeine high every 2 seconds. So y'all let me know. I got you.
I would like to put in clinical year may not be how you think it is.
Yeah.
It was definitely busy.
You know I appreciate your realness. I appreciate it because I had this utopia in my head about that acting and it was not that. Okay.
I was like, hold up. I thought it was going to be easier. Okay.
UABPA shout out for a second. We had a special populations class. I don't know if every program has that. And there was a lot of really great things that we learned. And we did have a great speaker on the social determinants of health. There's a lot of redlining in Birmingham, like they call UAB the University that ate Birmingham. There's been a lot of displacement of minority populations. But we learned all these problems. And then my friend and I were talking about this. And she's like, we didn't really learn a lot about what to do with them.
Absolutely nothing.
So I think that it can just start with a conversation here about what are some things we would like to implement in PA programs to kind of teach these cultural competencies outside of a textbook. Like, I'm so excited to know about that textbook, and I can't wait to buy it. My mom was the director of minority health for the state of Alabama, and she was like all about cultural competency. So I'm about it, but like it shouldn't be on us to learn it in a book. So I'm really thankful that our program I think they did some really great work. We had a great like LGBTQ panel. So, but like, what are we going to do about specific populations? Because every minority group has their own set of problems. Like, you know, Latin Americans have their own unique health predispositions. And so we should learn about those in school and learn how to address these cultural gaps, I guess is the right word. But specifically right now, we need to learn how to make Black people feel loved and at home in our clinics.
100%.
I think a very powerful, I mean, obviously, to be an orator, right? To have someone come and talk to you. I know in our program, one of our classmates has a sister who has osteogenesis imperfecta, and she came and spoke to us about how to address patients who have disabilities. And it was amazing, absolutely amazing to have someone from that community come and speak to you one-on-one and say, hey, this is what it is. This is, you know, what you can do to make us feel comfortable. These are things to be mindful of. And I think if every PA program sought out an opportunity for folks from different walks of life to come in and just express their experience, even from parents of children who have multiple sort of comorbidities and really high acuity cases, have them come in and talk about what it is to support parents and to sort of talk to them in that way. I think that that's probably the most powerful thing you can do, because then it opens up an avenue for you to at least have another person in that capacity to talk to, right? Not just the textbook is like, this is what we say, do this. Like, no. I need to hear it from someone who lives that experience, right? This platform is an opportunity to talk about it, to discuss those things that are part of the lived experience. And I think if PA programs did more of that, it would at least help to open the doors, you know, and allow people to ask their questions, to just be completely 100, because we're all just learning, right? It's like asking a kid to walk and they fall 1,000 times. You're not like, well, let me tell you, there's a right way to put a front foot in front. Like, no, shut up. No, there's no such a thing, right? Like, you just need to be open enough to hear and then invite people in. I think it's probably the best way that we can advocate for PAEA to change curriculum in that way.
Yeah.
Sorry to kind of answer one of our Q&A questions. This is for anybody. What is the correct way to refer to patients? Black, person of color, African American, etc. They want to know how to use or what to use for correct terminology. Should they ask what the patient prefers or just use a term?
I say ask the same way you would ask a trans person if they want to be, if they use male or female pronouns, right? You just don't want to assume, right? I've taken care, before PA school, I used to preserve fertility for cancer patients before their treatments began, but I also did it for persons who were transitioning. And so I never assumed that you were at the point of being ready to use male or female pronouns. I always asked. And so there's a difference between being African American and Black. You can mince words there, right? I'm Black American, right? African American, Black American, I identify with both, but some people may take a stance on either one. And so to be a culturally competent PA, just ask. And just say, hey, I just want to make sure that I'm respecting you and I'm doing my best to make sure my care and our interactions are something that are of mutual respect. How do you prefer to be identified? And just ask.
Natalie, I want to be you when I grow up.
Right. You,
no, seriously.
Please.
Hey, Natalie, I put your Instagram on there. I saw literally you got like 50 new people following you. So just... You're about to be whatever textbook that is. They're about to pay you.
That's to blow me up.
There was a question on here I thought was pretty interesting. If we can, pivot off to this one. So this PA student asked, so they're from an urban area, but they attend PA school in rural West Virginia. They find it extremely hard to explain systemic racism and racial disparities to people who live in 99.8% white populations. Any tips?
Oh, you went mute.
Go ahead, Stan.
Oh no, you went mute before your sentence finished. That's all I said.
Okay, so PA student attends PA school in rural West Virginia. They find it extremely hard to explain systemic racism and racial disparities to people who live in 99.8% white populations. Any tips on how to educate?
I would direct them promptly to the EJI website. I think that that is a good place to start, and just to see racism on our country on a national scale, like not even on a healthcare level, just to see how our criminal justice system marginalizes populations, and then to go from there to kind of ask other people what to do. But that's just, I think, a great starting point, just to kind of understand, like they have a great outlining the history of slavery and then how that transitioned to segregation and how that's where we are now. A history lesson teaches you systemic racism. Like,
Yeah.
I agree.
I will also say, look around them. I'm pretty sure they are amongst a majority white, you know, um, homogeneous class. It's no secret why there's 4% of Black PAs that make up the profession. You know,
Right.
there's a, you know, you can't wonder why there's systemic racism when there's a huge disparity in the profession. And this
Right.
is across the board. This is in med schools. This is in higher ed, all the way. You know, when we talk about accessibility in undergrad, that's all I was a part of, was just making sure those weeder courses were, you know, didn't weed out the students that you don't see in your classes today. As I got into those 300, 400 level classes, I started to become, you know, one of two Black people in
Yeah.
my class of 300 lecture hall. Then as I actually chose my PA program because of the location. I wanted to provide care for patients. I wanted to be at rotations in areas where patients would look like me. And I thought I would have a class that kind of resembled the population. We have these PA programs right in the heart of what we call the hood, because if we really want to be technical, Detroit, Michigan has the largest Black population when we compare it to the size of a city. And I'm one of two Black people in my cohort.
Wow.
And then when I question it to my program, why do I see the lack of representation? Then we talk about how the class size represents the number of qualified applicants. Okay, so why is that? There's no mentorships, you know, there's no
Right.
resources, everything's cost. You know, I see resources to get into PA school upwards to 100 something, over 100, more than your CASPA application. You know, that perpetuates the problem.
Yeah.
And when people turn the other cheek and act like it's, you know, it's okay, or they don't notice it, that's why patients are afraid to speak up, or that's why patients go to the doctor and then DM me knowing I'm just a student and ask the questions they should have asked their provider.
Yeah.
It's
Right.
when you ignore it and don't acknowledge it, people already don't feel seen or heard. So what's the point? You know, what is the point? So I just say, I don't think, read the room. You know,
Right.
it's no coincidence that there's no Black people or there's no diversity in your programs, even in your professors. You know, how many people have Black professors? How many people have competency classes? You know, I'm diversity chair for my program, and I think I probably did more as far as teaching diversity for the cohort, you know, but that's, you know, call out your professors, call out your
Right.
program for, we want to learn, bring people in that live through this, you know.
Right.
And I think that's why Black patients prefer Black providers, because they can
Right.
at least know where they're coming from. Like, how, you know, you can't, if a person never even struggled to get a ride to school, you know, you wouldn't understand that mother who just took 3 bus rides, had to wake up 5 hours early, didn't take a full day off. So she had to, you know, she took a half day off because she can't afford to take a full day. So that's why she's mad it's taking 3 hours for her to be seen. Like, all this stuff
Right.
is just a combination of everything. So
Right. Right.
we
And
get that.
And I feel, and just to piggyback off of you, Jazz, I just feel like diversity is needed across all health professions to increase the level of trust minority communities have with the healthcare system, and to combat all the disparities that people of color and Black, specifically Black people, face. Um, because we have an unsettling history. When we go back to the Tuskegee experiments, when we go back to things like Henrietta Lacks, it's led to a wide distrust of the African American community with the healthcare system. So we actually just got done reading this whole book on the immortal life and the HeLa cells of Henrietta Lacks, and we had a whole debate in class on it, and it was just so eye-opening just to see, like, how this healthcare system has truly taken advantage of people. You know what I'm saying? And I agree. I feel like it would yield better health outcomes if we did have more people of color, if we did have more Black providers. I just overall think we need more diversity in the profession as a whole.
I think one thing that I want to mention, a lot of programs have, diversity in their mission statement. And it's
right.
It's easy for us to think, diversity, it has to be racial diversity, right? But diversity goes a lot further than the color of one's skin or, ethnicity, right? It could be religious background. It could be, what kind of education their parents have, their socioeconomic status, right? So they can still say a program is diverse, yet racially it may not be diverse, right? So I think we really need to, figure out, well, what can we do in our communities, right? Our respective communities, what can we do to increase the number of PA students? Because, as Jazz was saying, she got to undergrad and there was only, a handful of Black students in her class, right? When she got into the upper divs, there's even less, right? But the starting number is already low to begin with, right? Mm-hmm. So what can we do to help minorities and other people of color, right, to get to a point where we're sending more of our own people in our own communities to college, right? So that our starting number is already a lot higher than what it is right now.
Oh, go ahead.
You go ahead.
No, go ahead.
So UABPA, we have our program director is a Black badass. She's great. But our diversity chair is a first year who, I don't even know if she's on here, but shout out to her. They are doing a great job in trying to integrate their programming in like elementary schools in Birmingham, trying to start young, showing kids like what they can become and what they are capable of. So I think that just being involved in whatever community your school is in with the youth, because that is, you think about what you're going to be when you grow up, when you're 5. And if you're not seeing that around you, then you don't know what you're capable of. And I think any kid is capable of being the best PA they want to be. So encouraging schools, programs to work, PA programs to work with schools in their area, just doing like classes here and there. I'm sad to be in clinical year and not be engaged in the program that our first years are starting.
I was gonna say something similar to that. So our school, Rocky Vista University, has both a Colorado and a Utah campus, and it is not at all that diverse. It's getting better. And I will say that the school has done a tremendous job of amplifying cultural diversity in terms of their programming. What I mean by that is the school understood that if you don't see what you could be, if it's not in your communities, then we have to do something about it. So it created this program with local school districts to bring in 8th grade students and high school students to meet both DO and PA students. And I thought that was phenomenal, because how many of us didn't find out about PAs until it was like way late? We're like, oh,
I didn't find out about the profession until going into my senior year of college.
Right.
Preach.
I was in grad school and I was like, oh, well, what? This is my second grad degree, but it's one of those things where not
what's
only.
What's a
PA? Say it again, Aaron. What'd you say?
Well, is it physician's assistant?
No, physician.
Oh.
I speak really quickly.
But really quick.
Christina?
You guys hear me?
Yeah.
You can call me Christy. I just want to say, first of all, I was just kind of sitting back letting everybody talk. I'll make this quick because I know I want everybody's voices to be heard who needs to be heard. But first of all, I want to say thank you to everyone who has spoken today. This is really critical, and for Erin for putting this on. Secondly, I'm one of those people who just follow Natalie. So one of those 50 people. I am also an 87s baby with kids. So I feel like I identify with you a lot there. So
I'm right there with you, 87 all day.
So what I wanted to say just really quick with everything you're talking about, you know, we're trying our best, and a lot of people are trying your best to change perspectives, but there has to be policy. And I hope that everybody here will rise to those leadership roles, because we need you. And that's not only in PA, but elsewhere. For example, I just was listening to the live on the Brookings Institute, and how police officers, there's no policy, they're able to be discharged from one department and still get hired in another department, okay? Secondly, physicians, they should not be allowed, if they have any racial biases at all, to be able to be fired from one institution and be hired at another one, okay? There's also needs to be more opportunity for higher education for all minorities, people of color specifically, who have been oppressed for a very long time. So how have you touched on it, starting early, but this also involves policy. So we need those people with the same ideas in leadership roles. And for example, and this goes a little bit more beyond like what we're talking about specifically as medical providers, but the payout for George Floyd's family and all those families are coming from taxpayer dollars. They've been paying into that fund, okay? And this is something that Dr. Ray and Dr. Perry spoke about today in the Brookings Institute Live. You can go look at it. Is their money coming back to them? And the police officers are not getting liable. They're not getting financially drained for this, because they know that the taxpayers are going to pay for their wrongs, and that needs to change. And all of that is policy. Everything is policy. So unfortunately, we can do a lot of our own work in our communities, but in the end of the day, we need those people in leadership roles. So if there's anything you get out of this movement here, is that I love everybody, what everybody's doing here. And I don't know if I will ever get there. I will aspire to, but I know many of you have that voice and that platform and are way ahead of me. So if you ever get the opportunity to get into leadership roles and dive into policy and learn a little bit more about it, even though you think you're not well versed in it, there's a lot of opportunities out there to do that. So that's, I think, the final message I want to say. And then as far as like speaking up with minority communities and schools and everything like that, the PAEA has a toolbox for that. And if you haven't seen that, go on the website. So if you can, if there's anything out there right now that you can do, is maybe set up Zoom conferences for those primary schools, high schools, your minority serving institutions in your community, and get that PA name out there more. That's just how people are going to be coming into the profession more, and any profession in that case. And somebody else said not to be not judgmental. And, you know, I am of fair skin, and I acknowledge I have white privilege because of that, but I identify as Latina, but I am white in the eyes of other people, and I need to understand that. And just how you said to ask what a person identifies with, that's very critical too. So that's just my final kind of like my little soapbox too, as Natalie was on one, but I would just encourage everyone to try to be a little bit more involved in policy. That's kind of my goal right now. I never was, and I see how much power there is behind that leadership role. That's all I have to say.
Chris, to that point, I love what you said. Be involved in your local PA chapters, right? Yes. Everybody has AAPA on a national level, but definitely get involved in your local PA chapters, because not only are you affecting policy for cultural competency, right, but you're also affecting it for what PAs are allowed to do. And everybody's all on optimal team practice, right? I hope you know what OTP is. If you don't know what OTP is, DM me, we need to have a conversation. But like, everybody understands that we affect policy when we're able to lobby for PAs in your state, right? That's how we move our profession forward and avoid this awful furlough that has happened to some PAs during this time. Like, there's no reason that very competent, well-trained PAs are being held back on the sidelines at this point in time during the pandemic. So make sure that you guys do that too. You're so right, Chris. Policy is the only thing that changes things, right? If
Yeah.
it's still on the books, it's still a law, and they can still do as they please under that law. So my mom's an attorney. She'll be
Natalie, I'll take it even one step further. I mean, you know, showing up to your local government and electing the mayor of your cities, right? I mean, I was looking this up because I was trying to figure out, you know, unfortunately, being a Japanese citizen and not having American citizenship, I can't actually vote. But you know, it's still something that I figured I could look up, and it's like 20 to 30% of, you know, the eligible voters that show up for local government elections. And the fact of the matter is,
Right.
the mayor that you elect chooses the chief of police of your city, right? Therefore, you indirectly choose the chief of police for your city that get to implement things like, you know, better training for police officers, you know, having courses on implicit biases, right? Everyone has implicit biases, right? It's not a matter of do you have them, but do you acknowledge them, right? There's things like, you know, getting rid of this invincibility cloak that they have, right? Where cops can essentially do as they please and have no repercussion for it, right? These are all things that can be changed on the local level at your, you know, by showing up to your local government. And you have a voice, you have the power to be able to put people that you want in power. And, you know, it's about time we held, or not we, you know, everyone else but me, hold these people accountable, you know, because they are there to serve you at the end of the day.
For sure.
I will say
Bringing it
this
back-
though, real quick, before I pass it to that gentleman right there, because he's been waiting for a long time. So I'm not sure if y'all know, but if you're in California, if you're a PA student in California, starting July 1, I will be your Kappa student rep. So whatever y'all need, let me know so I can use my voice to help, you know, because we can only do so much as well as just students. I can only do so much as a student member on the board. So, you know, hopefully this helps to increase discussion and dialogue with the Kappa board to make changes like OTP, like, you know, full practice authority, whatever it may be. So hit me up. But that gentleman's been waiting. Say what you need to say, sir.
Is it me? Am I that gentleman?
Yeah.
Oh,
Can I say
hi.
something?
My name is
Can I
Sunshine.
say something really fast?
Yeah.
Oh,
I'm so sorry. So taking you back to Chris's point and Natalie and Aaron, even as a great example of advocating and getting in positions of leadership within our profession, Student House of Delegates elections are open. If you want to learn about policy change, if you want to get your foot in the door, if you want to get good training in how to actually be involved with our national governance and how to take that to your specific states or even specific subset organizations for like pediatrics or anything like that, it is a beautiful opportunity led by amazing people who want to take the time and get you educated on actually bringing forth resolutions that will be enacted for our entire profession. Because something brought to the House of Delegates is actually what started the ball rolling with the diversity and inclusion. And correct me if I'm wrong, please, but it is what started the need for all programs to really focus on diversity and inclusion and have diversity and inclusion chairs. There has been a ton of policy that could have been enacted, but thanks to COVID has not been, that would have given AAPA, from yet again what I understand, more leverage in actually talking about Black Lives Matter instead of just the very broad statement that we mentioned earlier. Besides that, there are 2 great PAEA fellowships that are free to apply for. There is a PAEA, I think it's advocacy, I'm not wrong, or I might be wrong. And yeah, my test scores would definitely tell you I'm wrong. And another one about education. Would highly suggest you guys look at those websites. I'll get the links and post them in the chat in a minute. But if you want to talk about advocacy in our profession, then you have to apply to stuff like this. You cannot just sit by and say, oh, we need change without putting your, just put your money where your mouth is, do the thing and represent us and get the change done on a broad scale. That's it. Go for it, Sunshine.
I'm actually just sorry, really uncomfortable with the way that ended, which is just this like sort of blanket impetus of people of color to like go do a thing.
Apologies, that was not to people of color. That was to anybody who wants to really advocate for our profession and changing anything on the national scale, regardless
Okay.
of if that is racial or logistical.
So the first thing I had was the like minority stress toolkit for navigating a primarily white institution. And, you know, I feel relatively qualified to speak on it. I grew up in Miami. I'm a Latino trans man. And
Leah, we're here.
yeah. And
Hey,
I moved
Florida
to
right
Vermont.
here.
From La Grande, next to the hospital.
And then I moved to Vermont, which is 98% white as a state. And the way I managed that was you find your person or your people, right? Like you need at least one person, 2, 3, sure. You know, like retreat to them when you need to. You know, speak up when you can, and when you can't, retreat to your people. Make your people speak up for you, especially if they're white. They're probably not as exhausted as you are. So, you know, use your energy wisely. I think one thing that's a barrier to diversity in education and learning cultural competency is that it's seen as non-essential. You know, what we're studying for is the boards. The boards don't, you know, test you on cultural competency. They test you on when should you prescribe an ACE inhibitor. You know, so I could just see my school's, you know, the dean being like, well, we don't have time for that because we've only got 24 months and we've got to teach you X, Y, and Z. And so we're going to teach you the medicine and good luck. So there needs to be a shift in terms of seeing cultural competency as essential, as an essential part of not only learning medicine, but doing medicine. We've also talked a lot about the pipeline, you know, the student pipeline and how to fix those gaps. I'd also like to point out that pipeline is half of the equation. Pipeline doesn't mean shit if the school doesn't let in the students at the end and then treat the students with enough respect and treat them well enough that they stay and they graduate, right? So we need to fix the pipeline, but we also need to fix schools. Think about school policies around the GRE, which we've talked about as a test that doesn't really, you know, tell us who's going to be a good PA and who's not.
Exactly.
I don't know how many times I've used the things I needed to study for the GRE in PA school. Same thing for the upcoming, you know, PA exam, whatever they're creating, the specialty thing. It's bullshit. White people, people with money, are going to have money to put into test prep. They're going to have tutors. They're going to have $2,000 Kaplan things that are going to teach them how to win that test, get a good score, get a scholarship, get into school. People without money are going to sit there, oh, you have a bad score, you're not qualified. We're not letting you in because you're a minority. We're not letting you in because you're not qualified. If you were a qualified minority, that would be okay. This isn't racist, right? So, you know, we need to hold schools accountable to the policies within the school that create that problem. The policies such as having a GRE requirement, having cops inside your school. Think about that. Think about, so one plug I want to put in is there's a med student organization I talked about earlier called White Coats for Black Lives. I just had a conversation with the national section. They are going to start having PA chapters. Any school can create a PA chapter of White Coats for Black Lives. One of the things they put out is a literal 300-page racial equality report card. How are they doing in terms of faculty diversity? How are they doing in terms of student diversity? If that information were out there, I'm not saying it would like change the world, but I'm saying I could at least look up schools I want to apply to and see if they're going to be shitty to be in once I'm there. Because honestly, one of the reasons I chose where I'm going now, Chatham University in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, was they had a really super diverse cohort of people on interview day.
I went to Chatham.
And so interview day, lots of brown faces, so happy, was excited to join, got there, 90% white. You know, what if there was some piece of paper that could say, hey, this school does some things okay, but they suck at admitting brown students. They don't teach you anything about cultural competence. So those are my plugs. I'm going to drop a link to the Black Coats for White Lives organization, and they will have a training on Saturday for people to start up chapters. If you want to start up a chapter at your school, I think that's a direction I'm trying to go in my school.
Thanks for sharing.
Thanks.
Veronica, I know you had your hand up. Did you want to say something? And then afterwards, Marion, you want to make your next point?
I think after Veronica, we can pretty much like start wrapping it up with the last point. But
okay.
Yeah, go for it.
Okay, I'll make this pretty quick. I'm Veronica Coleman. I'm a faculty. I'm a practicing surgical PA, but I'm also faculty and director of admissions for UT Southwestern in Dallas, Texas. First, I want to thank you all, every single one of you guys. Listening to your voices has just been phenomenal this evening. I am originally from Los Angeles, California. I am not a 90s baby. I'm not an 80s baby. I'm a long time ago baby. And I can tell you that I remember being young when the last big uprising happened, and that was in Los Angeles, California, when the Rodney verdict was handed down. And it saddens me to see that we have made no progress. And so much has happened on this talk today. This is probably the best Zoom that I've been on in quite a few months, and hopefully none of my fellow faculty members are on here to hear me say that, although there are some students on here for my program. So I want to say that I've seen questions about, number one, how to approach individuals about this situation. And there have been tons and tons of posts out there about your Black colleagues are not okay, your Black friends are not okay. And I think if you are if you are a non-minority, and if you are someone that really just wants to offer your service, offer a hand, maybe not a hug at this point in time during COVID, but just some support, if you are coming from a genuine place, then I think what you will receive from that individual is nothing more than gratitude. But I think you need to also be prepared for individuals that don't want to talk. I'm one of those people, just like Aaron said earlier, the individuals that have been silent, in my eyes, it felt as though they were siding with the oppressor. So their silence was deafening. So I think if you are someone that really just wants to reach out to a fellow member of this community to express your support, or to even say, I don't know what to say, but I want to make sure that you're okay, then please do so. And don't forget your faculty, because just like they say, we are 4% of the practicing population, there are even less of us that are faculty. We intentionally recruit at my program. We don't just say that diversity and inclusion is part of our mission. It is actually true. It is part of our purpose. We intentionally recruit, and we
got
don't
a whole cohort right here.
Exactly. I mean, our recent cohort of 2022, my goodness, I can't believe that. Yeah, class of 2022. They are the most diverse cohort we have had in the history of the program. And when I say diversity, just like someone else said earlier, I'm not just talking about race and ethnicity. It goes further beyond that. We're talking about educationally disadvantaged, environmentally disadvantaged, first generation. We're talking about tons and tons of diversity and inclusion. And so I think when you are looking at programs, those are the things that you need to investigate. And when you get into a program and you find that maybe what they presented is not quite exactly what's being done there, then you need to hit them with the accreditation standards, because they are required to follow those accreditation standards. If not, they will get dinged. And that's probably one of the biggest things that your faculty members don't want to hear about. So you need to hold them accountable. Recruiting students of diversity must be an intention, and recruiting and retaining diverse faculty must be an intention. And if it is not, and they get there and they don't feel welcome and they don't feel safe, then they won't stay. And so I think I will leave it there. I tried to touch on quite a few things pretty quickly, but I just want to thank you guys. This is phenomenal. Please don't let your voices be silenced. You are really changing the face of medicine. I think about when I was in PA school and I was the only one of me, and all I learned was Black people were going to die from everything. And all my classmates asked me, was it true? So,
and there's no dermatology section for Black skin. I just want to put a plug. If you have acne, hyperpigmentation, you're going to have to find someone who looks like you, because they're not going to have it in.
So you all are wonderful. I just want to tell you I've enjoyed all of this, and keep doing what you're doing. Keep the fight alive. And there are faculty here that are supporting all of you guys.
We appreciate that.
Thank you so much.
Can I just add something real quick while we have a faculty here? And it's just furthering the point all about diversity and inclusion, and not only recruiting diverse students, but retaining the diverse students. I feel like we can take a step further whenever we have situations like what's going on right now. Like, it's really hard when the faculty or the school you attend to stays silent, and the only thing we receive is a very general email. There is no connection. It's basically just saying, like, it's hard, we understand what's going on, we are with you. It's just an email. Like, I feel like, it needs to be more open door, where thank you, the Minority Report, for doing this, because it opens up a door for all of us to voice our opinion. I feel like every school should be doing this.
I agree with you 100%.
Students shouldn't be just waiting there weeks and weeks on time and get a very general, broad email.
And I really recommend, I don't know if you all, hopefully you all received the email from President Howard Straker of PAEA. If not, I would recommend that you reach out to your faculty and ask them to disseminate that email to you. If you know much about PAEA and Howard Straker, he is an African-American male. He is at GW, phenomenal individual. And I would even tell you to take that letter and use that letter as leverage with your faculty and ask, just ask them, where's the response? Because you guys are hurting or you all have questions. It needs to be addressed. It's just fortunate that I happen to be at a program that has an open door policy. And as soon as things happened, I reached out to every single one of my student mentees, and some that aren't even my student mentees, just to check in and see what they needed, see if there was anything that I could provide, and even the non-minority students to really see where they were, because a lot of them didn't know how to reach out to their classmates. And so the other, I guess, alternative to that would be, if you don't get what you need from your faculty, try to reach out to some of your fellow classmates. And if you happen to be just that one, and you don't feel like you can find that space there, then you have this community right here that's on the screen. Unfortunately, we've been battling these numbers for a while, but people like you guys and groups like this will change that. And so there are quite a few organizations, and I try to follow all of you guys on social media, but I have a job, 2 jobs. So it's difficult, and so I really would recommend those things, and then bringing that to your faculty. I mean, you have to hold them accountable. I tell my students all the time, as long as they're not complaining about rotations, that I'm here for them. And I try to do whatever I can, you know, to ensure their success, because we're not a weeding out program. You know, once they're here, we want them here and we want them to graduate together, you know. But these are your future colleagues right here in front of you. So.
I see a few professors in the chat, especially Natalie.
Oh, wait a minute now. I'll be more than happy. I honestly have such a passion for just educating people. I just feel like my people fail for lack of knowledge. That's in the Bible. Like, my people fail for lack of knowledge. And when I say people, I mean everybody, right? Like, in the information age, I grew up when there was encyclopedias and copy machines, and my mom had a typewriter. There was no such thing as Siri. My kids ask Siri everything, right? Like, if there's something you guys want to know, it's out there. Now, I do have to caution, please watch the source, right? Because there are sheep in wolf's clothing. So you do have to do your due diligence. We've all been trained on how to correctly evaluate research papers and look for biases and make sure, you know, sample sizes were correct and all those things, right? So make sure that you're using it with a very analytical eye. When you're looking at something, don't just take it at face value. Look at the source, look at who was funding the source. All of those things need to be had, because you don't want misinformation. And a lot of biases and stereotypes are a result of misinformation or information that was disseminated that isn't entirely true for all. So do your research, use Siri. My kids do. Apparently she's a good source. I don't know. Y'all figure.
Well, thank you to all the guest panelists. I'm going to remove you back to the attendees section. But again, thank you so much for your input and discussion.
Seriously, we're
absolutely.
Should we just do closing remarks?
Yeah, I'm gonna let Marion, Stan, and Hunter put the closing remarks in, please. Thank you.
Okay. Like I said, I just want to thank everybody so much for attending. I've been thoroughly enlightened by this whole thing, and I've learned so much, and I'm so grateful that we have this platform to speak out and really understand where everyone is coming from and really get to the roots. I think my closing remark would be to, you know, challenge yourself, to really challenge yourself just to speak out against the issues of injustice. You know, I know a lot of us are on here and we post on social media, and that's great because it gives a platform to educate other people. But I also challenge you to be true allies in this, in like the workplace, in your home life, in school. I feel like it's one thing to be anti, you know, racism when your person of color friend is around, but the true work is challenging your peers when none of us are around. You know what I'm saying? So I just want to see more work, you know, behind the scenes, you know what I'm saying? And I just want to challenge everyone individually to take a stance and do what's right. You know, at the end of the day, do what's right. And that's all I have to say. Hunter, do you have any words? Anybody else on the panel, if you have any closing remarks, feel free to speak. Like I said, this whole experience has been so enlightening for me as an individual and very informative. And yeah, anybody with closing remarks, go ahead.
I mean, I'll go ahead and go. I cannot thank everybody enough for sharing your opinions, taking the time to talk to me specifically, because I know that I will never experience anything like what brought about us having this Zoom meeting, right? I will never be discriminated against for the color of my skin. I will never be discriminated against for my gender, because I'm a white male in America and I understand that. And so my biggest problem is that I have not been educated just in where I've grown up, where I have lived, like where I have gotten my education from. It's not a prevalent conversation. And I want to listen and I want to learn. And conversations like this are few and far between for me. And I greatly appreciate the opportunity to be a part of it and to have everybody speak so candidly and freely and really take the time to pour your hearts out and give us all better resources to understand how I can be an ally, or my friends can be an ally, or the next steps that I need to take to actually I don't know, be a decent human being, for Pete's sake. I do have a list, well, it's a link to a Google Doc that's a list of books and media and movies of like anti-racist literature and things like that. That would be a great thing to share. I'll post it in the chat before this is over. I'll also post it on social media and see if we can get that circulated a little bit. But it's a great starting point to really look at privilege if you don't understand it, or begin to have stories told about Black oppression and systemic racism that aren't very prevalent in non-POC circles. But thank you all so much.
Thank you, Hunter.
Can I add something? Or,
Let's
Go ahead, Sato.
oh, sorry. Yeah, so I posted this on my story the other day, but you don't have to be, an influencer per se. You don't have to be a celebrity. You don't have to have thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of followers. Each and every one of us has a voice. We have a voice. We have an ability to reach lots of people. The ball is in your court. Whether or not you want to reach, hundreds, thousands of people. You can choose to speak up and speak out against oppression, or you can choose to stay silent and, it's essentially enforce it, right? You have an opportunity. I, highly recommend, speaking up against it. If you don't feel comfortable, there's a dialogue, right? You can reach out to your friends. You can reach out to anyone on this panel. You can reach out to other people, right? It doesn't have to be a one-way street. Like, I don't have to hit up my old friend Marion over here and be like, yo, break it down for me. 400 years of history. I want a whole history lesson now, right? That's not realistic, right? But I mean, it's a two-way street, right? I can get to understand what she has been experiencing, just like she can understand what I have experienced in my lifetime, right? It's a two-way street. And the better we get at communicating our differences or, our experiences, the faster we're going to be able to unite and kind of create a bridge between our own communities and have a better understanding for what each and every one of us have gone through, And, it doesn't matter if you're a white, if you're, you came from an affluent neighborhood, you still have certain struggles that you are able to share with us too. So it doesn't mean that just because you're white and just because you're affluent, you have no story to share, right? So, reach out, try to open up a dialogue with someone. And, you'll learn a lot from someone else, just having a simple conversation with them, as long as you stay open-minded.
My quick closing comment is just continue to care about this when it's not the biggest thing in the news. I think that kind of struggled seeing some people who I know have been blatantly racist in their life posting something because it's the thing to do right now. And people make mistakes, and I hope that this makes them better, and from learning they change. But just, we will all be better providers if we continue to learn and grow from this, and continue to be allies for the rest of our life, because as much as we want this to end tomorrow, history has set a precedence. So yeah, just keep caring and learn, for lifelong learners,
Amen.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, I just said amen.
Oh. Snaps. But to piggyback on that, to make it very simple, you guys will see patients of color. That's flat out, plain blank, period. You're gonna see patients of color. You're gonna see Mexican American patients. You're gonna see undocumented patients. You're gonna see people who walk into your emergency room. I mean, you're just gonna see it. So it can't be a trending topic for you. There's just no way for it to be a trending topic when your job is to care for that patient to the best of your ability, no matter what age, sex, color, race, whatever. And so take it upon yourselves to, as they tell us to avoid burnout and be self-reflective about your interactions, because there's going to come a point when you're dealing with people of color and people non-persons of color, where you're going to have dialogues that are going to make you feel uncomfortable. You're going to have dialogues where you're not always going to have the right answer. You're going to feel like you're walking on eggshells and tiptoeing, but just be open. Just listen, do your best job to remove yourself from the equation. Don't come in with your agenda, and just be willing to listen. Because I think when you have 2 ears to hear and only 1 mouth to talk, you have to do twice as much listening as you do speaking. And when you do that, you leave a space for growth, you leave a space for change, and you leave a space for mutual respect and understanding. And your patients will be so joyful that you took the time to hear them and not just hear what you thought you heard. And that's it.
Amen.
Beautiful.
Natalie.
Beautiful.
Can I add one last thing?
Yeah, go ahead,
Oh, yeah, go
Jasmine.
ahead.
I just want to, so everyone, I think what people also wanted to get from this is like, how can they help? And I just want to, as a future provider, and just remember, help for each patient will look different. You know, people are going to want to know that you advocate. Advocacy going to look different for any Black patient or any marginalized group that you come across. And that's how it is for communities. Service looks different for any community. I used to go and volunteer for a certain city every summer, and we did something different. It's what they need now. And right now what we need is advocacy, you calling that racism out when you see it, you checking in on your Black classmates, your Black mentors, your Black patients, anyone that you're close with that could have, you know, been negatively impacted. And don't be afraid of your words. Don't be afraid that they'll get mad, or they'll get mad at how you said something. Just do it. You know, the acknowledgement is appreciated, and you're gonna just have to do it. It can't be something difficult to address. So that's really all I wanted to say.
Thank you so much, Jasmine.
I really appreciate y'all, and I really want to make sure that for the people that we have left on here, you guys register to vote. There's voting happening in certain states right now, and the
your
main
sense.
vote that's going on. We
I am a
definitely need
census.
some leadership.
Oh, just fill out your census.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Register to vote and do your census.
Exactly. And try to send some links to some friends, because like I had a friend who just recently watched I Am Not Your Negro. And it's just like there's just so much that they didn't understand that they like try to understand better now. So 13th, that register to vote. Please and thank you. And your census.
Any last words, Aaron?
Yeah. I mean, yeah, no, go ahead and take it. I could close it off, or do you want?
Oh no, I said my piece already. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
I just wanted to know if you had anything closing to say.
Just honestly, I felt this movement and this momentum so much, especially on Sunday when I was out protesting in my city. Like, it brought so many different people together. I put it in one of my posts, like the area where we were protesting, we were marching down that street. 5 blocks away are like 4 or 5 different gangs in Long Beach, rival gang members, right? And this movement brought everybody, brought our city all together. Like, it's bringing all of us together. We all live in different areas of the country. We all go to different PA programs. At the end of the day, we're all going to be doing the same job, different patients, different people, but the same job, right? And so it's our job to be able to put aside whatever biases we came from, and again, see the patients as people, as human beings. And you know, none of us have an answer for systemic racism, for blatant racism, especially in medicine and healthcare, but we can each do our part, like what was said earlier multiple times. You know, it all starts with us and individually, and then our families. Try to educate them as much as like it is talking to a brick wall. Just try to educate and try to enlighten people. And sometimes you're not going to be able to get through to people, and that's okay. You tried. And the last thing that I'll say is like my call to action to everybody, whether you're a pre-PA student, whether you're a PA student, whether you're a practicing PA faculty, my call to action is ask your program what they're going to do to increase diversity in medicine. What are they going to do to better represent us, not just a Cambodian American, not just a Black American, not just a female or male, doesn't matter. What are they going to do to represent the rise of diversity in patients, rise in diversity in medicine? There was a statistic that said 5% of PA programs do not have a non-white student in their program. And I'm pretty sure another 25 to 30% of programs only have one non-white student in their program, right? So how are we going to be able to help the communities that are, you know, diverse if we don't even have diverse patients and stuff? And again, I don't have the right answer. Nobody really has one, but we can all try to move towards it. And again, I appreciate all of you for sharing and I appreciate all of you for being here and listening. I learned so much. I was enlightened by, you know, a lot of these testimonies and a lot of these stories. And so I appreciate it. I appreciate you guys allowing us to create this safe space to talk and voice our concerns. You know, let's do this again, you know, as much as it's needed, much as it's needed. I recorded this, so hopefully we can upload it on YouTube to share to, you know, classmates that weren't here, faculty members. But at the end of the day, you know, this, all we got is us, you know, like as messed up as the system is, as hard and as difficult as our uphill battle is going to be, as long as we got us and we keep the momentum going, like, we're unstoppable, you know. Who knows how much we can accomplish. So I appreciate you, and I love you all.
Thank you guys so much for everything. We really appreciate it all.
Thank you guys. This is great. Kudos to all the organizers, for all the sponsors. This is fabulous, darling.
Now, I'd like to give one more specific shout out and thank you to Aaron for really spearheading this and getting it together, because
it's all good, fam.
Yes.
Amazing. I didn't know that I needed a conversation like this so badly.
Everybody needs a debrief and a safe space to do it. Like everyone's dealing with trauma, like trauma. Like, let's talk about this, like mental health and the debriefing of it. The reason why you walk around and no one gets the care they need is because no one has a safe space to do it. And I think it would be a shame for students to not recognize that. And I'm glad that we did, because that's what the trend is going to be as providers. Offer for these things to happen without your judgment, without your preconceived notions. Just offer a safe space. So thank you, Aaron. Thank you, guys.
Definitely. Yeah.
Continue with your cohorts. I'm not in school yet. I'm a pre-P, but I would encourage you. I'm in an MPH program, and we've started a discussion to a program where you can chat, and a lot of the links and people of color in my cohort are actually the ones sending me the resources to be enlightened what I need to do. So if you have a availability to do that, I would start some kind of program or discussion within your cohort. I think it's a good idea.
Sure. Thank you guys again, and everybody stay safe.
Yes,
take care,
please.
and please stay safe.
Thank you guys.
Thanks for coming through, y'all.
Hi. See y'all on the gram.
Can't wait.
Natalie for president.
I gotta find Natalie, man.
Bye.
What's up, Lil?